Okay, hopefully this video will help a little bit with some of the homework questions. So we've got the real questions that you can see, and then sometimes we've got similar questions. So the first one is, what is the equivalent expression to this? And we're given a list of square roots. So the one that we're going to do that's similar to that is this. So what we've got to remember is for these questions, what we're doing is we're kind of doing the reverse. So I've got to figure out what, when I do the square root of it, gives it 8. So 8 times 8, I know, is 64. And for this one, I know that I have something to give us power 5. So I know for this one, it would actually be d to the 10. And then I can just check, is the square root of 64 8? And if I have 10, do I give me 5? And that indeed is the right answer. And then obviously you can do the same thing with these terms here as well. Now, what I actually did was, if this was a multiple choice question as well, if you type in the question, now I won't let you put D, but it'll let you put X in. If you graph this, now I only did this in the first quadrant. This is something I noticed yesterday. This only works if you do this for the first part of the graph, but that's kind of fine. If you type in each answer and graph that as well, you can see that these two are not the same. And you can see these two are not the same. This one, it's not a great color change, but you can just about see that it's exactly the same. And for the last one, you can see it's clearly not that one. So that answer that I came up with, you can indeed see that it's correct. Now, notice that what happens is if you move it to the middle, it won't exactly give you the correct graph, but it will certainly will for this side of the graph. Certainly, you could tell it wasn't true for the other ones because it actually missed the graph completely. But notice for the one that is, it'll work for this side, but it'll actually give you the wrong side. So that's why I moved the graph here, just so you could check that as well. So just an alternative way you might want to do that question. Same idea with this one. This one's just with numbers, which sometimes makes this a little bit easier. That's the real question. And I'm going to do a similar question. So the question I'm going to do then is, I want to bring this number back inside the square root. So I'm just going to square this number. So 6 times 6 is 36. I already have the 3 inside the square root already. And then you can just work out 36 times 3, which is 108. So on my question, it would be answer choice D. Now, notice what happens if you type the question in and type each answer in as well. It will give you a decimal equivalent, and this is the only one that has the same decimal as this. So I know, therefore, that this must be the simplified answer for this question. Now, sometimes we have to be careful because not exactly specifically for this question, but there are some questions when you do that, particularly when they give you this and ask you what's the simplified version, there might be multiple answers that have the same decimal. If that happens, we always look at the square root part, and then we pick the one that has the smallest square root, and that's the one that we would actually choose if there's multiple answers that are the same. Just a difficult one for this one. I know we did one of these in class, so I couldn't make up another one for this, so we're just going to go through what we're looking for. So basically, a couple of things we're checking. Anything with exponents inside, I know that those can be simplified, so I'm going to ignore all those straight away. Unfortunately, there's only one for this one, so that doesn't make that too easy. For the other ones, I got to check the numbers inside and see if they actually simplify. Well, this doesn't have a number. So this one, I would say, is good. That one's simplified. Square root of 3, you try it on Desmos. You do the table thing, you check. It comes out as 1 square root of 3, so that one is good as well. This one we already said no because there's an exponent for. This one, same thing. You try the square root of 8, it would come out as 2 square root of 2. So that one is no good. That simplifies. Square root of 9, you can probably do that one in your head. It's 3, so that simplifies, so we don't want that one. And this one doesn't have a number, so this one's already in simplest form. So I would pick this one. Oh, sorry, not that one. I apologize. This one and this one. So I would pick answers 1, 2, and 6. And it's one of those where you have to check each answer. And if you add one too many, you lose the question. And if you miss one, you also lose the question. So they can be a little tricky to do. Simplify square root of 200, x to the 36, y to the 81. Well, the similar one I made up is this. So first thing I'll be checking is what is the square root of 45? Now, I say that, actually, for me personally, I actually do the letters first because they're actually easier to do. So remember the square root for things with variables, you just half the exponent. So a half of 44 is 72, and a half of 100 is 50. Now, what they're going to hope on the SOL is that you've forgotten that and you see the square root and do the square root of 144 and say, oh, that's 12. And then you hopefully pick one of those two answers. So just remember for the exponents, you're just halving. So I already know it's between B and D right now. And then now I just need to focus on this square root of 45. So for square root of 45, I already checked it here. It's not a perfect square. So I did my table, 45 divided by x1 squared, starting at 6. And I keep counting down until I get two whole numbers. I found it was 3 square root of 5. And for that reason here, I would actually pick answer choice B for that question. If you're not sure if it's 3 square root of 5 or 5 square root of 3, there is one other option, that we could actually do for this as well. You could actually just type in 3 square root of 5. And notice that it has that same decimal, 6.70. And if you want to check the other one, just to make sure it's not 5 square root of 3, you can do that as well. So yeah, 6.7, but that says 8.66. So I know it's not 5 square root of 3. So just be careful with that though, because sometimes you might get more than one answer that's actually correct. So make sure you do the variables first if you're going to do this, and hopefully it might narrow your answer choices down a little bit. Find the simplest form for this one. This one's pretty straightforward, actually. I made up a similar question. But for this one, basically, you're just going to go ahead and type it in. If you get a whole number, stop. That's the answer, 15. If it's not, then remember you're going to do the table. But this time you divide by x1 cubed. Start at whatever this number is, and then just keep going down until you get two whole numbers. Obviously, for this one, I got two whole numbers straight away because the answer is just 15. So if we ever have 1 as an answer, then we know that we already worked out the answer straight away. Ooh, getting along these questions now. Numbers, 3 letters, ones that don't easily half necessarily as well for 17. So here's my similar question. So same thing, I'm going to start with the letters first. So a half of 16 is 8. A half of 25 is 12.5. So when that happens, I put the 12, and then I have to remember the 0.5 means whatever that letter is, I'm going to have to put one of those inside my square root. C, if it's just a single letter, that automatically goes inside the square root. Now, that might be enough for us to get rid of some of our answers, possibly. Possibly not, because we've got to keep going. Well, this one doesn't have a B inside, and this one doesn't have a B inside, so I can narrow that part down. Now I've got to try and figure out, is it 3 square root of 7, or is it 7 square root of 3? So I type it in, go fill in my table, and you can see that it is 7 square root of 3. Or you can do like you did last time. You can actually check the decimals just to make sure that they're the same. 7 square root of 3, 7 square root of 3, both 12.12. Just to prove that it's not 3 square root of 7, you can see this is a different decimal, and it's not the same as the one that was in the question. So I know that that answer is wrong. So I got 7 square root of 3. So let me go back to my answer. So I need a 7 at the start, and then I need a 3 inside. Just checking carefully. I believe it's answer choice C here. But yeah, just make sure we're not doing a square root of 16, which is 4. That's very tempting to do on these questions. But the rule for square roots is that you have the exponent. Question 7, simplify the square root, cube root of negative 1,000. For the cube root ones, like I say, it doesn't really make too much difference. You just type these straight in. I did this one. If you type this straight into Desmos, you would actually get what the answer is. Just a reminder of how you type it into Desmos, in case it's not so obvious. You got to go to functions, miscellaneous. There's that button here, and then you can type in that number here. Negative 216. So the answer would just be negative 6. A lot of cube roots do tend to be perfect cubes, actually, so that tends to make these a lot easier. Also, there's no numbers, no letters for those questions. Simplest radical form of 288. We have talked about this one several times, so I think this is one that you can probably do. The only thing you're going to have to be very careful of is, and this looks like I might have to give away this question, but that's okay. If you aren't doing it by the table method, if you're just typing in the decimals, whoops, let me just go back and look at those, what they have. Whoops, I went the wrong direction, I think. Do I actually have these on here? No, I don't. 2 square root of 72 and 12 square root of 2. So if I type in 2 square root of 72, oh, look, it's the same decimal, and you might be tempted to stop at this point. However, this might simplify for a second time, so we do need to keep going on this. So the other answer is 12 square root of 2. Notice that gives us the same answer as well. So that might be more simplified. 2 square root of 12. Nope, that doesn't seem to work. And 6 square root of 8. Notice that also gives us that 16. So I'm going to leave all the ones that give us the same answer. So how do you choose which is the correct one? You go for the one that's the simplest radical. So 72, 8, and 2. 2 is clearly the smallest one. So you would actually pick that one. But that can be dangerous and it's easy to miss. That's why we'd rather you do the table, change the rule, 288 divided by x1 squared, starting from 16. So 16, 15, and then you can just keep going down until you get to 12 and 2. And then that guarantees that you avoid those good wrong answers for those questions. So something just to watch out for while you're actually doing those questions. And for the other questions, I think these are pretty similar to the other ones. I'm not sure I actually have anything for this one. Perhaps I do for this one. Cube root of 5184. So you would check in Desmos to see what it actually is. And I'm not going to do the whole question, but I'm going to get the question started. So we type in the cube root of 5184. It's a decimal, so you put in your table. And just remember for cube roots, though, you got to divide by x to the power of 3. So 5184 divided by x1 cubed, and then you'd start from 17, and you would keep going until you find out which actually is the correct answer. Okay, and danger of using the decimal method for this one, there will be probably more than one answer that's correct. So you can do that, but then just make sure you pick out the one that has the smallest number for the ones that have the correct decimal. Don't just immediately pick the one that has the smallest, because this might be totally the wrong answer, of course. And for the last one, we already did questions like this similarly. So we talked at the start here. Remember, you have each of the exponents, and certainly you can do the square root of 250 on your calculator. Probably going to be 5 square root of 10 just because there's 3 of those answers here. But hey, you can do whatever you need to do that. But remember, you're halving exponents for that one. And hopefully that provides you with just a little bit of extra assistance if you're struggling on some of those homework questions.